Welcome to Dirshu HaYomi Bahalacha. Today we are learning Hilchos Tzitzit. We are in Siman Yud, and we are going to begin with Sif Zayin, and we're going to see Sif Zayin, Ches, Tes, and Yud. The three topics on today's Daf HaYomi Bahalacha are: to what extent do the sides of a talis katan have to be open? Can buttons close the side of a garment? And when is wearing tzitzis considered carrying on Shabbos? So let's begin with Sif Zayin. Mabushim shehim psuchim min astadim lamata. If you have these garments which are open on the sides, yesh lehem arba kanafos letzad mata lomala heim stumim, and there are four corners, but then it is also closed up toward the top, so it depends. Im rubo sosum potter. If the majority of it is closed up like a regular t-shirt, then the fact that there may be a little bit of an opening toward the bottom, it's potter from tzitzis. Im rubo patuach chayev. However, if the majority of it is open, like we find some of these t-shirts in which you actually wear them like it's a t-shirt, but it's open, rove of the beged is open, that is chayav and tzitzis. So what if it's 50-50, right? So you could have asked it's like a stira. So if it's 50-50, matilon oso l'chumra v'chayav tzitzis. In that case, we're not sure. So therefore, if it's exactly 50% open, we still say it's chayav and tzitzis. Ve'en yotzin bo b'Shabbos. But because it's a suffix, this particular beged, we don't want you to walk out with it on Shabbos. So the Mishnah Berurah says, it depends if you have rubo patuach. So he says, hainu davka rov mikol habeged, the majority of the entire garment. V'lo kamo she'osin hachayotin talos katan shetoifen oisum in a studin. They sew it from the sides. Manichin bo nekev, and they make a hole shemachnisin bo hayadayim, where you can put your hands in like a t-shirt, right? V'toifrin lomata, and they sew it from the bottom. Mehanekev umanichin ro patuach umoidedim rak metachas hayadayim. So basically, part of it is open, but the majority of the beged is not open. So they say this is actually v'zet tois gomer. This is a huge mistake, that they make this type of a beged, and even though maybe it's partially open, but it's not considered to be mechuyev and tzitzis. Ki oz lo nikra bas daled kanafos. And the fact, the way that they stitch it, it's not considered to be a four-cornered beged. V'korva davar shemavarch barachal vatala. V'yal kolponim lo yodif men beged sheches pasuach dechayav b'tzitzis. We're not going to say it's any different than a beged which is 50-50, that we said were strict in chayav and tzitzis. So we said that it has the same din if it's 50-50. So again, that a person has to be aware of that issue. Okay, so the first question: to what extent do the sides of a talis katan have to be open? So this is how he explains it. A garment that resembles a modern day talis katan is sewn together on both sides is only required to have tzitzis if most of each side is left open. Otherwise, it is exempt. An opening for the arms does not count towards the majority of open space. That doesn't count. That's not part of the row of beged. In fact, it is counted as part of the area that is sewn together. So if, for example, the opening for the arms measures 15 inches and the area that is sewn together measures 20 inches, there must be more than 35 inches of open sides for the garment to require tzitzis. If the open and closed areas are equal in length, tzitzis should be added, but a bracha is not recited. So that's what we said. So the area where you put your arms, even though it's opening, right, it's a hole, but there's stitching below it. So it's all really considered to be sosum. That part is considered to be closed up. Now, why is not a person, let's say it's halfway exactly. So you have to wear tzitzis, but you can't wear them on Shabbos if there's no Erev. Why not? So the Mishnah Berurah says, the Shema Potter, because maybe you actually don't have to have them. But tzitzis havi kamasoi. the fact that you're wearing it, it's not like a shame beged, because you're only wearing it because that's the mitzvah. If you don't become the mitzvah, so it's a masoi, which is something which it's hotzah on Shabbos. He says, "V'ayin Magen Avraham," that writes Afal Karmel Saucer. Even if it's what if it's not a Rosh Hashanah? It's a Karmos. It's din Rabbanan. It's Safek Rabbanan. L'kul. No, Ein Oisin Safek Rabbanan L'chatchila. We're not going to allow you L'chatchila to do this, even in case it's a Safek Rabbanan. Rabbi min achronim maskimim im also tomid the makel b'zeh. Some people are actually more makel with regard to this. Okay, says the Biur Musafim number 20. So he quotes the Chazon Ish and says, "Shahari af al pi shebeged zeh enu chay b'tzitzes el machmas safek." Even though the only reason why you have to put on tzitzes there is because of a doubt, mikol makom einhu chashiv k'masoi. He says this is not considered a masoi. Shahari yesh sarach b'taliyas chuti atzitzes kidei lotzes yedei hasafek. We do hang tzitzes over there in order to remove you from this doubt. So at least you're wearing tzitzes. V'kivan she'ein hachutim oimdin l'hinatel harihim batel mubeged v'chashuvim kebeged atzmo. So they're considered like a beged by itself. Afikach yotzin bo b'Shabbos. And he quotes Rav Shimon Zon Arbach and says, "Masha pasak shebeged shesafik im hu chay b'tzitzes ein lotzes bo b'Shabbos." You can't go out with this type of garment on Shabbos. Ein ze'ela kishedaitel l'shanais as a beged. That's only if you want to change the garment. L'oifen she'eschayev b'vadi b'tzitzes. If your intention is eventually to fix it so that the tzitzes will actually be fixed properly. That is, which is therefore right now it's like a masoi because it's not the way you really wanted it to be. However, says he continues, Sheshel Haviraya she'also latzes bebeged shesafik im hu chay b'tzitzes gam kishein b'daitel l'shanos as a beged. According to Rav Shimon Zon Arbach, he says that even a situation where that was quoting the words of Chazon Ish before. He says that even if your das is not to change it to make it more better, shein lataltel, you're not allowed to. Shein lataltel shofar Rosh Hashanah. Like you're not allowed to carry a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so let's see how he explains this over here. When is wearing tzitzis considered carrying on Shabbos? So on Shabbos it's forbidden to walk in a public place without an Erev, wearing a garment which has objects connected to it that do not serve any purpose. Therefore, it's forbidden to wear a garment with tzitzis if the garment is exempt from the requirement. The garments which are obligated to have tzitzis may be worn since the tzitzis serve the garment. So the Shulchan Aruch rules that a garment which is only possibly required to have tzitzis should not be worn outside on Shabbos. Since it may be exempt, it's possible that the tzitzis do not have any purpose. Other Achronim question this ruling, as we saw in Biur Musafim. They say that due to the uncertainty, the only way to wear the garment is by affixing tzitzis on it. Some Achronim will limit the Shulchan Aruch's ruling to cases where a person plans to afterwards to alter the garment in a way that will make it clearly obligated to have tzitzis. Since he plans to fix it, the tzitzis on the unaltered garment are purposeless. So therefore, according again, we saw it may be totally on what your das is if you want to fix it or not. So if you want to fix it, so right now the way it is not the way you want it to be. Okay, now let's go through the rest of the sifim. Kafa shehi patucha. So this type of garment. Says Rashi, says the Mishnah Berurah, Hu davar hamachaber, let's study habeged. It's attached to the sides. Achas al achas. Shipsucha be'inyan sheishel arba kanafos, has 4 corners. Yim yikvu ba ashtaringa, which this is this type of garment. La sosa ketuma, if you're going to make it closed, then kedei lapoitim etzitzis enum moil tikkun zeh. It doesn't help. It has to at least be half of its length from the bottom at the very least. It also has to be set from the bottom from its attachment. Uman yeharov sosum rov haniro linayim dimokeni osum mishum maris ayin. So there's this issue, even if it was done properly, that there could be a potential issue of maris ayin. Hakanafayim tzarich shihu marubos. So the corners have to be squared. V'loihi agulos cannot be rounded off. Mitznefes patura. Afilu shel artzos hamariv sheshnei rosheha mushlochim al kisveihem begufam. V'afal pi shemischasebo rosho v'rubo pater kivan sheikra l'chasos harosh dekususcha al marchmanav l'kusus harosh. So if you have this some type of a hat, that even though it's a four-cornered hat, that is not considered to be mechuyev in tzitzis. It has to be a beged, which is the ikr is for your body, not for your head. So the Mishnah Berurah says, "Ma'ashaisim atar l'talis." The reason why we have this atar for your talis, ikara nasel chisei rosh, that's to cover the head, it has nothing to do with the head. As we saw before, that you want to make sure you're wearing the talis the right direction, that you should always wear it the same way. He quotes the Arizal, as we saw before, he wasn't makbid on having an atara, fine. Moving up to the Mishnah Berurah on Chavtes, it says, L'chein ein lasos betalos katan kirasim lomata mechetziai dahavi kasosum. You have to make sure that you don't have these stitchings or connections on the bottom, because it's considered like the garment will be closed off. V'hu nichpapin ma'oid Rashi HaKrasim Lastad Hasheni. That's if it's like really attached. Sheni Yachal Hatiran El Aide Maisa. The only way you can remove it is a forceful act. The Bezech Hashivi Chibor Gomor Hail Inin Kilaim Hail In Tzitzis of Abalav Hachi Lo Hashiv Chibor El Aide Zeh. So it has to be something which is more a stronger attachment. Will be sosum, and if it's sosum, then it's no longer considered patuach barov, and therefore it's not going to be chayv in tzitzis. So if you look in the Biur Musafim, number 21, he says the Bezech Hashiv Chibor Gomor. He says l'einin beged hamachuber b'stadav alidei kafturim. So let's say a person has it connected through buttons. So he quotes shedinu kebeged hamachuber b'karasim. Shinivtachim bekalois hanechshav kapatuach. It's comparable to, even though it may be attached, but it's so easy to undo a button, so therefore it's considered like a patuach. It's open. It's not considered sasum. Therefore, according to this interpretation, it's not an issue as far as having buttons. So let's see how he says here. Can buttons close the side of a garment? A garment with two sides that are buttoned are clasped together and can be easily opened is not considered to be closed on the sides and is still obligated in tzitzis. Similarly, if a person wears a tight belt that brings the two sides of a garment together, he must still affix tzitzis to it. If the two sides were clasped together and the clasp was bent into the holder, rendering it difficult to open, however, the sides are considered connected and the garment is exempt from tzitzis. A person who wears a buttoned or clasped talis katan over his clothing should make sure that most of the sides are clearly open so that people will not mistakenly assume that this garment is exempt from tzitzis. Otherwise, it's an issue of maris ayin. Let's see one question, then we'll stop. So the question was asked, does a frock with a slit in the back require tzitzis? No corner is rounded. So we see this like a kapata, and they actually, if you look at one of the corners, it actually is rounded off. So if the slit is most of the length of the frock, then it actually is requiring tzitzis. And again, that's the reason why when you look at a kapata or a bekisha, that it's usually one of the sides, which is like the inside, so you don't actually see it, is rounded off, so there will not be an issue of being mechuyev in tzitzis. Ad kan.